You remember the good old days? That recipe your mom used to cook? That movie you watched as a kid? Or the song that was playing when you had your first kiss? This is what is known as nostalgia. Is that warm and fuzzy feeling brought upon by fond memories of times long past. And in all of the scenarios I've listed, it's looked at as wholesome and endearing. Loading up Mario, eating that mac and cheese recipe, watching the Goonies, playing vanilla World of Warcraft.
Well, actually, you don't actually like World of Warcraft. It's actually just rose-colored goggles, and you don't actually like the video game because it's bad and it's just nostalgia.
I apologize for that. Movies, recipes, old neighborhoods, even other video games. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something about World of Warcraft specifically that people feel the need to gatekeep and dismiss as nostalgia. It doesn't matter that it tripled subscription revenue upon its release. It doesn't matter that it retained a large portion of this audience and carried the franchise during this time. It doesn't matter how much money it's made, how many people played it, the fact that it's been relaunched hundreds of times over the past 2 decades.
World of Warcraft vanilla is actually bad because of nostalgia.
But the question today is, does it need nostalgia? This is another video by Jimmy analyzing the same question with another MMO, RuneScape, and I have a feeling what he's going to say will be quite relevant and comparable to the good old WOW, so I wanted to watch this with you here today. Let's see what he has to say.
Old school RuneScape is often paired with the word nostalgia, which is understandable. It's in the name. Old school RuneScape. The game currently stands in its 11th year of existence and takes place in the top 3 most played MMORPGs. And I am here to say that nostalgia has not been a driving force to get old school to where it is right now. In fact,
so here's the thing. When you triple subscription revenue, who really cares about the reason why? You know, putting aside for a moment that nostalgia is the reason why people look back to vanilla fondly, if it brings back so many people, who cares? I will never understand why people try to gatekeep this so hard. The only reason I can come up with is tribalism. We talked about this in a recent video. MMOs are time consuming. They're almost like second lives to some people, and they invest so much time and so much money and emotion into their favorite games, and it creates this insecurity that if there were another game that could challenge it, it puts into question their decision to invest so much time into it. A lot of the times when people get really toxic about MMO discussions, they're not even necessarily defending their favorite video game. They're defending that choice of investing so much of themselves and their resources into it. I think that a lot of people underestimate that the value that their investment holds in these multiplayer games is pretty heavily dependent on how many other people are playing. If there are 10,000 people on your server, you feel like your investment holds more value than if there were to be 100 people on your server, for instance. I've said this before, it's even true for single-player games. One of the most appealing things about game launches is just the simple fact that everyone is playing it. Even if it's single-player, you're experiencing it for the first time with everyone else, and there's so many people playing, it's all over social media, and it has this bandwagon effect that makes you feel like your time spent is more valuable because that's what everybody's doing, right? And this is an extremely powerful effect, especially for MMORPGs. But, you know, on the flip side, the opposite is true. If very few people are playing, you may start to think to yourself, well, maybe there's a reason for that. And therefore, your choice to invest so much of your time or money into said game is put into question. And, you know, MMOs are competitive in the sense that they're quite time consuming. Many people only have the time to play just one, and taking the monthly fees into account, most people are only willing to pay for just one. So it creates this friction of tribalism to where if somebody from MMO A sees MMO B doing well, it's like this threat to them and they have to aggressively defend it. I think that's the only reason that I can come up with that people are so aggressive with this whole nostalgia dynamic with Vanilla WoW and apparently RuneScape, and they gatekeep what are or what aren't valid reasons for enjoying something. And they're willing to look at this graph and say, rose-colored goggles, bro. There's nothing wrong with nostalgia. It is in fact a pretty wholesome feeling in my opinion, and if it drives subscribers, what exactly is the issue here? I don't really know what the case is with RuneScape, but even if it is nostalgia, is that really as big of an issue as people are making it out to be? I don't know, I feel like life is too short to introduce these impediments to determine what we're allowed to enjoy and not enjoy. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. Let's see what he says.
I would argue that nostalgia has never been a true contributor to old school success. It's not the reason any of us are here. See, recently I made this video talking about the state of MMORPGs and what future they may or may not have. And naturally, being my video, OSRS came up a few times. And not to pump my own tires or anything, but I think it was a pretty good video. However, you know, what I think about it doesn't matter because one of you people decided to send it over for a peer review, which first of all, you were supposed to send this one. I wanted that to be reviewed. Okay? Why has he still not watched this video? What am I even paying you guys for? But it's fine because I did a peer review of the peer review. That way I get the last word in, so I win arguments by default.
Look at this graph. This is terrible.
It's just beautiful.
Look at how good the motion capture is and how photorealistic Baldur's Gate 3 facial capture is.
Doesn't matter for an
I
MMO.
think that plays such a massive role in why the game is popular.
WoW doesn't even, when they're giving you a quest for the Alliance, he says, as he just said a novel of things to you, and I don't even think his mouth moves when he says for the Alliance.
Anyway, during this peer review, Asmund said something I've heard a lot.
If this game came out today, it wouldn't be as popular as it is. It only exists because people have nostalgia for it for 25 or 30 years. That's the main reason.
And that must have...
Again, who cares? You're going to hear this question like 5,000 times during this video, I swear to God. But the way that I look at it is, not only is there nothing wrong with nostalgia, if people gain enjoyment from it, it is a legitimate design philosophy. I mean, what is the point of a video game? To have fun, for entertainment. And if somebody gets entertainment from these classic pixelized 8-bit graphics or this 8-bit music, who gives a flying fuck? It adds charm, and charm is a big reason why people play video games to begin with. Just look at the retro indie scene. You know, you have these games that release with this very retro and aged look and feel, sometimes stylistic, many times for budget reasons, and they end up being some of the highest sold games on Steam. And a lot of the times they're made by just one person. Papers, Please, Stardew Valley, Undertale. Undertale could have been released in 1995 as a Flash game, but it wasn't. And it's one of the highest critically acclaimed games on Steam ever. Classic video game design, no matter what the genre, has this timeless appeal, it seems. It's like that old saying, there's beauty in simplicity, and as AAA is fumbling around, failing with games with multi-million-dollar budgets, you have some guy who lives off of the value meal from McDonald's, making a game with graphics comparable to the NES, reaching these legendary sales figures because, why? It has charm. Why does it have charm? For many reasons, one of them being nostalgia, so who's to say that it's illegitimate or it doesn't count because it's nostalgic? This classic old school RPG style is very popular today. I'm sure nostalgia plays a role, but again, who cares? Why is nostalgia like this taboo dirty word within the industry? I thought it was only classic vanilla. I didn't know that RuneScape had this problem. I don't know, maybe one of you guys can explain it to me. I just think that it's dumb and irrelevant. Not that the people who make this argument are dumb, I'm just saying that the argument itself is just so pointless and stupid.
It's been the tip of the iceberg for me because I opened a Word document and here we are. As someone who has two different old school RuneScape series that can be linked directly to nostalgia, I'm here to set it straight. When I say this, I'm not just talking about MMORPGs. Old school RuneScape is one of the greatest video games ever made. Nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it's popular today. It had to become popular to begin with. If RuneScape never took off, would there be in OSRs today? Probably not. It would have shut down like many other MMOs. So, you know, during its beginnings when it was obviously new, nostalgia didn't play a role. It's the same with classic WoW. I mean, there's probably a reason why it became this worldwide cultural phenomenon. I don't think it's very outlandish to say that one of the most popular video games of all time could have some lasting appeal in the modern era. There were a lot of MMOs releasing during this golden era. It was a pretty niche genre, but that doesn't mean that they weren't trying to bring it to the mainstream. They saw that potential, and many were releasing and failing, desperately trying to find the magic formula. And it's no blind luck that this game reached 12 million subscribers and eclipsed the population of most small countries in the world. What I'm saying here is that there are reasons why these games became popular to begin with, and age doesn't magically make them not exist. In fact, sometimes I think you can say that they age like wine. One of the reasons why the private server scene existed in the first place is that as the game changed, vanilla offered something that Blizzard was no longer offering. And it's not just all nostalgia. And again, even if it was, say it with me, who cares?
Has not done the legwork to get it there. But I'm not in the mood to talk about it because I'm hungry and my personal chef is going to make me not hungry anymore. So give me a second, please. Hello, I'm not the same guy. I'm a chef. When Jimmy hired me, I didn't know how to cook anything. They told me to apply to as many jobs as possible and just lie on my resume, and I didn't think I'd actually get hired. For a while, I was just kind of opening his fridge and staring blankly. Worked for a few weeks, but I really had to figure something out, so I learned about HelloFresh. Never again did I need to think about what I was gonna cook. They told me what I was gonna cook, and they gave me everything I needed. This is
how sponsorships should be done. Jimmy's really good with this, I think. He's very good at making them funny and interesting.
what chefs dream about. They make it foolproof. And all this stuff comes in beautifully packaged from a farm. They've got about 50 different recipes. By the time I cycle through all of them, he thinks it's a brand new meal. He forgets, so he still hasn't caught on that I'm doing this. I don't know if any of you have been to a grocery store before. It's not for me. The other day he said he was in the mood for a barbecue, so I told him I've catered hundreds of barbecues. I cooked up some cheese-stuffed burgers. Totally bought it. I never even used a grill before. He took me on vacation with him. Thought my cover was blown, but I can literally send it to where I'm vacationing. He never found out. I snuck the link in the description. He's never gonna see it. Go to that. You'll get 10 free meals and free appetizers for life. People are gonna think you got ratatouille in your hat. Use that code. Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video and getting me this job. Nostalgia in the video game world has become very messy because nowadays it's pretty common to weaponize nostalgia into this marketing tactic. Just a little party trick they pull to make a quick buck at the expense of us remembering what it was like when our life was simple and happy. Very kind of them. Most recently, you can look at the Star Wars Battlefront collection.
It's definitely misused or weaponized in some instances. For example, this Battlefront abomination that he's about to talk about, or any of the Disney movies for that matter, but it's like, is nostalgia really the issue here? It's a design philosophy, and if it's misused, does that mean that you attack the philosophy? What about the garbage developers and publishers responsible for it? Or the people who pre-order everything, despite the fact that they've been burned 4,000 times in the past? And it's also silly based on the premise that it's never going away. What, is Capcom just going to stop releasing Resident Evil games based on the premise that it was a series created in 1996? You know, those remakes are pretty good. Critically acclaimed, as a matter of fact.
But it's dirty nostalgia, so it doesn't count.
No game should ever have a sequel ever again because it's weaponizing nostalgia and preying upon people's emotions. Twiddling their little dick dastardly mustaches at emotionally manipulating grown adults. Oh, I don't know what to do. I have to pre-order this game that I already own 5 copies of because I have no power over myself. Oh, it's nostalgia.
Classic collection. When that thing was first announced, I thought I was going insane, seeing all the positivity surround the announcement of that, because everyone's just going bananas for this big release of the classic collection, as if it wasn't this available thing to everybody with a semi-running computer. What was that about? $30 for a texture pack. It's that kind of thing in the entertainment industry that has put this negative connotation around the word nostalgia. Things like remastered games, their goal is for a quick cash grab, very short term. Get everyone to purchase it, never look at it again. But with a situation...
How about this instead? Wait one day after a game releases to see if it's a steaming pile of crap. The real issue here, I think, lies with the pre-order culture. Total Biscuit said it best. Why buy something based off of a promise when you have a track record of these developers selling you half-finished games? And I think that dismissing nostalgia, even from actual good games, is, I don't know, it's just nonsensical to me.
Situation like old school RuneScape, it's not really the case of releasing something once and then forgetting about it just to make money for a second. Jagex really didn't want to do this whole old school idea, coming up with basically every excuse in the book not to do it. I'm sure most of you have seen the famous clip of, you think you do, but you don't, that Vanilla WoW received when asked the question. Didn't exactly age that well, but honestly, Jagex did the exact same thing. They just didn't do it during a live streamed event. Not only was there a petition that content creators rallied communities to go and sign, there was also a private server that had about 390,000 registered accounts, which Jagex shut down. And if neither of those things happened, then we wouldn't have gotten the poll from Jagex themselves, just to be sure that we really wanted it. Jagex knew.
So I'm quite unfamiliar with the history of RuneScape. It does sound pretty similar to Classic, where developers are kind of misreading their audiences and writing off legitimate demand as misguided nostalgia. It's actually good that he brought it up because these are now two pretty big instances of huge profit potential almost being missed due to this resistance to evil nostalgia. And I'll ask again, who cares?
That nostalgia is a short-term feeling. You don't just constantly feel nostalgia. It's this thing that hits you. It might stay with you for a little bit. Players wanting to feel nostalgia was not enough to justify putting a bunch of resources into. What Jagex didn't understand was that this was not an outcry or a demand to feel nostalgia. Nostalgia really wasn't what people were thinking about when all of this was going down. This was all an expression of...
Yeah, and you have the private server community to show that. If it was a flash in the pan, why did it run perennially for over a decade? The real tell was how popular Nostalrius got. It was far from the first vanilla server, I'll tell you that much. There were many servers starting even before the official release, and they only slowly but surely grew in popularity until they got so big that they couldn't really be written off as just this temporary flash in the pan nostalgia anymore. And I'm sure it's a similar case with RuneScape.
Resentment towards the decisions that Jagex was making, turning the game into something that players didn't recognize anymore. Have you ever been playing a sandbox game? You're about 20 hours into it, things started becoming more complicated, you're micromanaging things, you're kind of just really missing that early game. It's just a very congested feeling you're getting. There might be some long-term decisions that you made that you're really not enjoying anymore. Suddenly you find yourself pushing all this progress away and starting fresh with a new game. That way you can create a different path and make different decisions that will affect you later down the line. I think that's more of the
Yeah, and there's an entire genre based around that. It's called roguelike. Games like Binding of Isaac, or if you want to count roguelite, Dave the Diver, Hades. These are games with massive fan bases, and to one extent or another, particularly more so with roguelikes, they revolve around starting fresh runs. You can also see this with the New Game Plus runs and so many other different genres of games. There's just something appealing about starting fresh and going through a simpler version of the game that you enjoy. And this is multiplied many times over with multiplayer games because as time goes on, they become less and less appealing to play, don't they? One of the most asked questions on my channel is it too late to start World of Warcraft? Is it too late to start Season of Discovery? Is it too late to start that Community Fresh run on Era? And it's a legitimate question. It's less appealing to start when people are clearing through Nexramas compared to, 1 week after launch. You feel like you've missed the boat and you're starting this race a few days late, and you have this loss of this competitive atmosphere and a feeling of just missing the most exciting part of the game. It's one of the reasons why I like the level capped phases in SOD. Now, there are downsides to them for sure, such as a lack of content, which I think you can also attribute to the developers rushing players through everything, like we talked about in that last react with all of the gold and XP boosts and incursions. But the good side is that with each new phase launch, it kind of had this lingering fresh feeling where you didn't feel as far behind. This effect is particularly strong with RPG games or any genre with a heavy focus on character progression, because the further that you get, I think there is an appeal to starting fresh and, making different choices now that you have a better understanding of their long-term impact. And it's especially true with MMORPGs because with a single-player game, generally it's pretty hands-off compared to the MMO that constantly changes in these huge sweeping ways. They remove core features, implement entirely new ones, sometimes pretty poorly designed ones, let's be honest. And I think that something that these people who demonize nostalgia don't understand is that the draw isn't necessarily this yearning for the good old days. Sometimes it's more of a lack of enjoyment of what the game has turned into. It's like, okay, I don't mean to come across as crass here, but BFA was pretty fucking bad. So let me play a version of the game I know I'm going to enjoy more. And it's like, oh my god, you don't like island expeditions? Rose-colored goggles, am I right?
Feeling that RuneScape players were having. Jagex was screwing up our playthrough, things felt wrong, and we wanted to go to the main menu and start a new game, redo a couple thousand decisions. So Old School launched February 22nd, 2013. Players logged into a server that was a backup of the game from August 10th, 2007. It was as if players had traveled backwards in time 5.5 years. So for the first couple weeks, the average player count was about 40,000, peaking on day one with 65,000 concurrent players. But about 3 months after launch, Old School RuneScape was averaging about 17,000 concurrent players. And by August, about 12,000. The main game was consistently holding more players than Old School. And the reason that it was declining was very simple. There's no updates. I mean, there were some quality of life improvements here and there, but I mean, the first original content that Old School got was Nightmare Zone, and that's just about the most boring thing you can do. It's content built for you to look away for 10 minutes. They also got Rooftop Agility, which, I mean, it's cool, but I mean, it's still agility. Those updates we were getting were simply not enough to keep players excited. And I don't know if you could tell, but nostalgia was definitely not keeping players there. But here's the plot twist. I believe that the lack of nostalgia was exactly what the game needed. The game was just kind of sitting here with nothing happening to it. The difference.
So this is where I think RuneScape and WoW differ. It's hard to say because, again, I'm not super familiar with RuneScape, but, vanilla has been relaunching pretty much unchanged quite successfully for a long time. Currently, the new hotness is Season of Discovery since the level 60 phase just released, and we'll see how that pans out. But in the absence of an official relaunch of vanilla, people have taken it upon themselves to do this community fresh run. And I think it's also hard to say because we now have 4 different versions of Classic, so there's also this element of a splintered player base. From what I understand, OSRS is standalone and people kind of self-impose different challenges upon themselves, and it doesn't have this Classic syndrome where it has Era, Season of Discovery, Cataclysm, and Hardcore all running at the same time.
The difference between this 2007 world and the original 2007 world, players with their developing adult minds saw this whole big sandboxy world from a whole different perspective, which sparked new ideas that had never been tried before. What if you were the last person on Earth and you logged into an Old School RuneScape server? If it's just you and this video game, how hard would that be? Well, I mean, I don't know, let's try it, how about? Yeah, this is cool, this is working, but what if when we did this, we only had one life? You're not allowed to die, or it's a permadeath, it's done. That's adrenaline pumping, let's do it, let's try it. But let's go
Yeah, just like in Hardcore WoW. In the absence of new content or challenge, if the game is good enough, particularly the more sandbox it is, the players will create these challenges for themselves. And you also see this within the parsing culture, where the difficulty isn't necessarily from the raids anymore, it's leaderboards on these third-party websites. One day I want to do a Retribution Paladin run on Hardcore using an NES controller.
deeper, hear me out, let's get a little crazy here. What if you couldn't use a bank, limited to 28 inventory slots? Could you do that? I mean, I store hundreds of things in the bank, surely that's not possible. Or is it? Let's try it. I just got a crazy idea, we've only got these 28 inventory slots, no banks, that's it. We also lock ourselves to a certain region of the game, let's try that. It's crazy, I know, but think of all the things we have to discover, all the methods that no one's really ever thought of or tried, because you'd have to be stupid to try them, but that's all we have. Did you know the map is made of chunks? What if we locked ourselves to chunks? We have to unlock one chunk at a time. Clue scrolls are how we progress. Chronologically time locked, cave locked, no light plays like me in real life. Tile locked, one square, the squares in the game, one at a time. Skill locked, only some skills. One inventory slot, it's all I need. No Wikipedia, no guides, don't look at me. Prop hunt, I'm an item now. One hit point, permadeath, lock me out. Jagex, you in on this? Leagues, we take all those ideas, make them fast now. Go! And we're still not trading anyone. Unless it's with your friends, group of 5, self-found 5 of you. Soup, we need a game show, 4 seasons of it.
After this quest guide, 1 sec.
Great, the whole world is PvP, but if you're the last one standing after a couple weeks, you get real life money. Make a series, 86 episodes in a row. Ice Mountain only. Rat lock. No shoes, we're feet locked. Shirts off, no magic. Only Slayer, that's it. Where are we? Where am I? What year is it? Over 10 years later, we've all collectively made one of the greatest communities in all of gaming. Currently,
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. It's just people congregating together over their shared addiction, or love for a video game. I was actually really surprised at how huge the RuneScape scene is on YouTube. It's all about these series and challenges, it seems, and I think that says something. It's sort of reached this level where players are making their own entertainment, and it's wildly popular. It's why I've said so many times before, if there ever is going to be another MMO that will reach WoW's climax, it'll be Sandbox. And that's because it's a much less explored genre, and as displayed by social media, people find player-made content fascinating, kind of like that hardcore tournament in World of Warcraft that reached hundreds of thousands of live viewers. It's going to be Sandbox, mark my words, if it ever happens at all, because again, I think the rise of social media surrounding WoW has sort of sapped a lot of its uniqueness that the genre once held. But we'll see.
averaging 110,000 concurrent players every day. And you know what? I'm a fair guy. I'll lower our player count by 20%. That way, we've only got 70,000 more average players. The old school devs deserve credit where it's due, because after they realized that updates equals interest, original content was constantly being pitched, pulled, and then developed as the players helped shape the direction of the game.
What do you guys think of the same thing for Classic? In Season of Discovery, there are quite a few changes, some of them requested by the community, but all ultimately completely curated by the developers. And there have been some misses for sure. Incursions are a big one. I don't want to pick on the developers too much, but I feel like it's just impossible for a small team to know their game more than a community that's been playing it perpetually for 2 decades. In fact, Blizzard has kind of had that reputation of being out of touch with what their players want. Just look at how long they refused to make Classic to begin with. I think that there have been a lot of changes in SOD that I feel are really against what vanilla represents, such as doing the same repeatables over and over to level from 1 to 50 in the span of 2 days, all the while earning like 1,000 gold. That kind of goes against a lot of the core pillars of vanilla. I think a lot of people would agree, such as it being more about the journey rather than the destination, and that struggle with economy and everything. But considering how much OSRS is popping off right now, I think it would at least be worth a shot to do polls like this in Classic. Like maybe for the next season, how would you like to see a poll that asks which of the following should be added? Hyjal as a zone, an Ashbringer questline, or a new Dragon Raid?
Most of the updates stay true to this nostalgic aesthetic. There is nothing nostalgic about this gameplay, and that's completely okay. Old school RuneScape is a standalone game. I promise nostalgia itself is never going to be the reason that we are seeing growth. Like I was saying, in a way, the lack of nostalgia is what got us here. New creative directions for both players and devs to take. And it's funny because 4 years ago, I could have swore we were almost out of ideas. There's no way we keep coming up with things. Fast forward to now, all I can think is, I can't wait to see 4 years from today and see what crazy shit we've done. Because with this player base and all the possibilities that we've discovered and still will discover, I've got no idea. Anyway,
I should switch to a RuneScape channel. WoW's over, you guys. It's going to be all RuneScape now. I do actually want to play it.
while I have you here, click the like button. I can wait a second. What else are you doing,
Yeah, click mine too. Like that smash button.
I can wait. You can. There you go. I'm assuming you clicked it. Players still feel nostalgia, don't get me wrong. It's still a part of old school. Me, mostly the audio. When I play the Al-Kharid track, I can transform right back into being 9 years old, training on the purple guard guys. I can sense somebody stealing my rock crab every time Borderland comes on, or the body parts track just dropping me directly into the experiment cave. The sound of a whip, or a dragon longsword special attack, or a goblin taking damage. That's the shit that'll hit me with nostalgic feelings sometimes.
For me, it's the Westfall music. Like, I know that Darkshore is faster to level, but I say screw that crap. Point me at some liverless gore tusks, damn it. Let me walk through the corpse-infested Moonbrook. Because, again, there's nothing wrong with nostalgia, and if that's what brings you the most enjoyment, have at it, because it's a video game, and you're playing it for enjoyment, I imagine, hopefully.
Feel it. And it's not just those 2007 memories that trigger nostalgia in people anymore. Old School's been out for 11 years, which is more than enough time to create nostalgic feelings for people.
People look back to the 2019 launch with nostalgia already. I know that I do. You've probably seen me use this clip like 100 times of this initial ejaculation of players. You see this guy named Tech? He actually ended up being my raid leader for all of 2019 Classic. It was a really exciting and memorable time. It was like, finally Blizzard caved in and gave this whole vanilla thing a go, to great success, I'll add. And for me, the coolest thing was that I had been gushing over vanilla at this point for years. I started making vanilla videos long before 2019, and since many people weren't willing to do the whole private server thing, this was their first taste, and they actually got to experience firsthand this indescribable charm that the game has. And as shown by the subscriber chart and the retention it held, it was a very liberating feeling, because I was making all of these videos in the face of the very subject of this video. It's nostalgia, it's bullshit, it's rose-colored goggles, and so on. And it just mystifies me that even after it triples subscription revenue, even after this chart, and it running for decades on private servers and being relaunched over and over and over, people still repeat it to this day. It's crazy.
There are players now who will get more nostalgia at Zulrah than they would at the Goblins in Lumbridge. Maybe they remember creating an Iron Man and playing in 2014, 2015, grinding it for hours, learning it, and if they went back, they would get hit with it. At the end of the day, it is not a contributing factor to our growing player base. I think as adults, a lot of us are coming to this realization that old school RuneScape has the ability to respect your time while also having the capability of consuming all of it whenever you let it, which is really nice.
Still gonna get some XP while I can, so.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be on my phone.
Okay.
There's so many levels of attention that you can do depending on what activity is going on in the game. You could be AFK for 20 minutes doing something while still progressing your account, or you could be hands on your F keys and mouse doing some crazy ass boss mechanics, and there's so many more things that are in between those. There's so much to do in this game. I think a lot of MMO players out there are looking for that number go up feeling, and I really don't think there's many games that do it better than this one. That famous RuneScape quote, "You never quit, you only take breaks," just holds up year after year. Old School's early game and mid game is always gonna have that sense of familiarity. It truly is always waiting for you. I'm not trying to turn this into some ad for Old School RuneScape, but I just think it's important for the MMO world to understand that there's about 1 million things that RuneScape gets right that a lot of other games could take from. So to directly respond.
For sure, and along with Classic WoW, this doesn't happen if it's all written off as nostalgia. I mean, it took hundreds of thousands of accounts made on Nostalrius for the developers to finally pull the trigger on Classic. All of the people who posted the Wall of No and put up all of this resistance because they're so insecure about their game that they lash out and dismiss what could very well be appealing game design aren't constructive at all. Now, I haven't played Dragonflight. As you know, I just prefer Classic, but didn't they directly state that the reason why they changed the talents back was because of vanilla World of Warcraft, and they realized the value of giving players more choices and getting a talent point more than once every 15 levels? I won't pretend to be on the pulse of the current fan base, but from everything I've seen, these talent trees have been received pretty well generally, and they're a direct inspiration from, guess what? Vanilla. And it's the other way around too. I'm sure there are elements from later versions of the game that could do well in vanilla. I think you see a lot of that with the runes in the Season of Discovery, which I think have also been received pretty well. Not perfect, because nothing ever is, but what I'm saying here is that I think there's room for symbiosity between all of these different versions and between MMOs themselves, such as Dragon Riding, which, let's be honest, was taken straight from Guild Wars 2. If you actually care about your game, you want other games to do well, because not only does it increase competition between these developers and gets their asses moving, it also creates opportunities to make their games better by looking at what the competition does and how they make their game appealing, and then using that to improve their own game.
On to Asmund saying that if this game came out today, it would not be as popular as it is. I humbly disagree. If
Yeah,
graphics and all these Unreal Engine 5 projects have taught me anything, it's that now more than ever, graphics don't mean shit. We're getting a greater and greater appreciation for this place. This is a crazy hot take, but I will stand by it. I think old school RuneScape will probably outlive almost every other MMORPG. And I'm gonna say it, including World of Warcraft. What, you don't believe me? I mean, just ask World of Warcraft players.
True.
They're right here. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy.
Don't watch my old videos, you guys, because it's just nostalgia. Remember, you don't actually enjoy the original Star Wars trilogy. It's just nostalgia, so let's collectively start inhibiting our own enjoyment of things by arbitrarily gatekeeping if the reasons we enjoy them are legitimate or not. Oh my good lord. Alright, I'm done. Good video, Jimmy. I really enjoyed it. I agree with a lot of what you said. In my opinion, it doesn't matter if it's nostalgia, but you made some really good points. You guys should do yourselves a favor and subscribe to Jimmy. He's a great channel, I think. And if you haven't seen yet, I'm going to post this at the end of my next few videos. I relaunched that Lil Mads plush from last year. The campaign has about a week-ish left if you guys want to get your hands on me in plush form. I'll have a link to that in the description, so go check it out. But aside from that, have a good day. Like the video if you liked it, because I will most certainly see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.